All right, let's go for it. Hey, Esther.
Hey,
Mom,
how's it going?
it's going good. Mom, dietitian, author, exercise lover. You're quite well-rounded. So I can't really ask how to become a mom because that's kind of self-explanatory. But being a mom, how have you kind of found time to pursue book writing and helping so many others with their lives and becoming better versions of themselves?
I hired help throughout for childcare. You have to get help. My first book, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, I wrote before my son was born. But then the year after he was born, I wrote 2 books, and then wrote one more years later after that. But I did take a few years off when he was really young and we were moving and I had like some health struggles. So I did take some time off. And then once he was in school, I did hire help afterwards. So now, he's almost 14, so I can just work and, have a very flexible schedule. What's that?
I said he's kind of good to go right now at 14.
Very good to go. But, the more I used to think that kids, I was like, oh, once they're older, they won't need me so much. They need you more and more, actually, which is very interesting. And you just have to be a presence. You don't have to parent that much as kids get older. You do have to do a lot more listening and be a presence. So now what I do is I really build my business around my son's schedule. And so I'll have like very deliberate gaps in the afternoon where he's transitioning. He's coming home from school or, in non-COVID times, taking him to an activity or sitting down with him. We go over the homework that's due. I give him a snack. And then I'll say, you want to work side by side with me? And then I use the afternoons to get admin work done, to answer emails for the day. And so it's really strategic where we're both super productive, but I can be working right up until, dinner prep or even during dinner prep. So you just kind of like build your business around your life if you can. If you're in the fortunate position to do so, you do. It makes a big difference.
You said kind of work side by side. Does he come in your office?
My office? No, I'll tend to like bring my work down to the kitchen table in the afternoon, and it's nice for me to get out of the office, which is next door to my bedroom. So
that helps. A long commute.
But I do miss the days of like going to just have a meeting or like have a coffee with someone or just work in deliberately like take a morning away from clients and work in a coffee shop and write. And I miss that so much. I miss the stimulation around me right now. As we all do.
Now, was working a door down, it's not always what you've done. So how did you kind of transition from, being out and about, as you're saying, to being, a door down for your commute?
Virtual. Actually, I have worked this way for many years. So the virtual practice I'm so blessed. Unfortunately, it was not a leap. I didn't have to pivot. The only thing I had to pivot was, I was doing 3 to 4 talks a month for different groups or companies or, corporate work. And so that's just all virtual now. But fortunately for me, it really wasn't a pivot. And it enables me to, Instagram's a great tool. Like we have an infrared sauna in our basement. And so yesterday morning, I was like boiling in the sauna and doing Instagram videos at the same time. So it's kind of like the nice thing is that you don't have to have your hair or makeup done anymore. Like you don't have to, the expectations are so much lower and more relaxed. And that's something I really enjoy. Like my husband, we crack up. Like his outfit, his uniform every day is like a Lululemon hoodie and sweats. And he looks perfectly nice, but like he'll come down and I'm like, I see we're wearing our uniform today. Kind of like, oh, are you wearing a hoodie, this hoodie or that hoodie? Oh, but like he's very fortunate. He doesn't have to be on Zoom all day for his work. So he can wear whatever the hell he wants.
For him. Now, has health and fitness kind of been your forte ever since you were little?
Well, I wouldn't say since I was little, but, I grew up actually a pretty sick kid. I had ear infections every month. I was on antibiotics every month. And my dad was a dermatologist and my mom was a nurse. So there was no like holistic or integrative anything. I grew up eating, wheat and dairy and a lot of inflammatory foods. We were kosher, so my mom never had real butter in the house. She had margarine. So it was like, and she baked with Crisco. So it was like a super pro-inflammatory diet for me. And then my grandfather, he was an amazing physician. He was an ears, nose, and throat doctor, and he took out my tonsils with my grandmother. My grandmother put the ether mask over my face, and he took out my tonsils. Now, to make the story even wilder, I will tell you that they did it in their house in Brooklyn. They had a 4-story home in Brooklyn, and the first house had a waiting room, a consultation and treatment room, and then he also had an operating room. Mm-hmm. And then they had 12-bed pediatric recovery. So I slept over his house the night before with my mom, and then woke up in the morning and Nanny and Poppy took my tonsils out. So
fascinating.
After that, my health got better. I didn't suffer so much until I was much older and went through childbirth and then went through a whole bunch of health changes. But so I went into nutrition because I was surrounded by medicine and medical professionals and healers. Like my dad and my grandfather, regularly did house calls. I would watch them on weekends, like taking calls from patients, sometimes going into the office if need be. And so they were really gifted, kind humans. And so I did grow up surrounded by, giving back and listening and taking care of other people. But when I really got healthy was in my 20s. Even though I had degrees in nutrition, I didn't go into functional medicine until 5 years into my career. So before then, I worked with a nutritionist myself when I went to run the New York City Marathon. And that's when I really understood how taking care of my body and training and like eating real food, no pasta, no white flour, but instead switching to like sweet potatoes and beans and legumes and rice and, fruit and vegetables and protein. Like my skin just glowed and cleared up. That was the other thing. I suffered with terrible acne and bacne, like all through high school, right? So my dad put me on antibiotics. Then finally in grad school, I went on Accutane. And like once I started eating healthy, my skin just glowed and I cleared up. I was like, oh my God, I wish I had these tools so much earlier on. So I was late to the game in like really putting health and exercise, to
Better
use.
later than never.
Better later than never, yeah.
Now you said you got into marathons and you worked with somebody. What was it like when, the whole idea of distance running, you got your big pasta dinners, your potatoes, your pancakes, and not doing that?
Well, I think I actually was under eating carbs because I used to bonk out like crazy. My glycogen was just cooked. And I don't think I repleted with enough carbs. So that was a good lesson to learn. But it felt really good. I felt really energized. I remember the last mile of the race, I ran into an old boyfriend of mine, and he inspired me to do the marathon. Actually, he was an ultra marathoner, and he was just in sick shape. Yeah. And I passed him. He was pushing someone in a wheelchair for, oh my gosh, what's the organization that raises all the money for cancer? So you can run. If you raise a certain amount of money for cancer, that you'll automatically get entered into the marathon. So he hadn't gotten, he didn't get into the marathon. So he decided, it's called Fred's team. So he was like pushing someone in a wheelchair for all 26 miles, which is amazing. And I passed him the last mile. And he was like, were you just running with a friend of yours? Like, did you jump in that last mile or did you run the whole thing? I was like, no, I ran the whole thing. Like I had a reverse split where the second half was faster than the first. Because I trained really well and carefully and was just on an adrenaline high. It was really one of the best days of my life. It was incredible. But I only did it once. Once was enough. That was
once you check it off the list, you're good, right?
Yeah. And honestly, my body after was like, no, thank you, no more, please. It's very hard on your body, So, and I've lifted weights for a long time, and that's really good to my body. And I do a lot of walking, and that's really good to my body. And So now that I'm 50, I just like really listen to my body. I don't like kill myself.
Over the years, I can't believe that you're actually 50. I mean, seeing you
Yeah.
here, I would think like 38, and I'm not just saying that.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. But it's good living, honestly. It's like really taking care of your body. It makes a huge difference. Like if you're drinking heavily or smoking or, eating really processed foods, it will show up on your skin. So you can't mess around. You gotta be. I always look at J-Lo. Like J-Lo, I mean, yeah, she probably has some Botox and stuff, but her skin is ridiculous, and she doesn't drink at all, and she eats really healthy and works out. So I'm like, she's my inspiration of how good I want to look as I age.
Is there anything that you've been reluctant to change along the way? I mean, we've got all these paradigms that are in our head that we've been taught since we were little kids in grammar school. Even my daughter, she doesn't get into fights per se with her health teacher, but they have discussions.
How old is she?
She's 13. Yep, she's 13 now.
And of course she's not going to want to change anything.
She followed me all through going to chiropractic school and listened to all the lessons and everything through our practice and the things that we do. And so she's very honed in on what to eat and how to eat. And then everything's being taught in school, well, the old school way. Have you gone up against that yourself in being reluctant to make any changes from conventional wisdom?
Well, I loved alcohol. I still love alcohol. Like if I could be, I'd be a smoking alcoholic. I love it. I mean, I was a party girl, and to this day can make one of the best martinis that would rival any professional bartender. So that was a really big part of my identity for a long time. And that was like the hard thing for me to let go. I mean, even if you look at my first book, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, right? You can see like a girl in a martini glass. I mean, that was me. I would have liked that in a martini glass if I could. I loved alcohol, and but it was really just a mindset shift. And I knew, that it just really wasn't serving my body. And I noticed like I started to get really irritable after I drank, and I didn't want to be that way to my family. And it catches up with me the next day. I'm always really tired, even if it's just one drink. So I'm like, and it messes with my sleep now. I'm like, it's not worth it. And mindset wise, like I'm always in a cocktail state of mind. So, but it took me a while to like leave that alone. Everything else sort of fell away naturally. And I really see like, if I don't eat well, I get sick more easily. I'm more tired. I don't have the mental focus. And so to run a business, like you have to have a tremendous amount of bandwidth. You know this, like to take care of patients all day, you have to have your A game on because you are being hired to heal people. So you better not mess up. And if you're hungover or just exhausted, you drank the night before, or you didn't smell, like you're doing everyone a disservice. It's really out of integrity with, what I preach.
Are you alcohol free totally, or do you have a little something here and there from time to time?
Yeah, no, I'm not totally free, but every now and then, yeah. I mean, I think, what is it now? January. I think in December, maybe we went out to dinner for like a belated anniversary dinner, and I had a martini, and that was really freaking good. Well, like I didn't even drink on New Year's Eve. I was fighting a cold, so I don't have any attachment to it anymore. It's not who I am. It's just something I enjoy. Right. But no, I'm not 100% anything free. I just can't live my life that way. Yeah.
No, you're right. What's your experience with that? It seemed like people go on, call it a diet, and it's a one size fits all. That's it. You can't drink alcohol. You can only eat chicken. I mean, these things. What kind of advice would you have for individuals doing that, where it's 100% black and white or nothing else?
It's such a pertinent question for this time of year because I have so many friends who every year I watch them go on and off Whole30, on and off. I'm like, what's going to happen on day 31, people? Like, you're going to regain the weight and go back to your life. So I really teach my clients and, on my social media feed, write a lot about this. Like, you really have to build a diet around your life. Build a diet around your life. not build your life around a diet. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. Just look at keto. Like, I bash keto unabashedly because no one sustains it. You know, I'm like, see, the most enthusiastic dieter is the one who is on week 1 of their diet, right? Check in with them in 6 months to 12 months. They're not on, they've regained the weight. And I see a lot of people come to me, especially women with fatty livers after doing keto. Their thyroid labs are off. Like, it's really a mess. And especially with women and carbs, like, I really don't go too low carb too long. I'll do it temporarily, or I'll carb cycle, you know, and have people adjust their carbs on workout days versus non-workout days. But I really try to be inclusive with food and have people have a really healthy relationship with food. The exception, obviously, is if someone has an autoimmune condition, if someone is really bloating up from certain foods, if someone is intolerant to foods, and they know it. They're like, oh, my joints ache. You know, I don't feel well. You know, grains can trigger a lot of my clients, or gluten. So, but it's their choice to remove it from their diet. I'm not like militant about it because they know it bites them in the tush if they're not careful. They pay for it dearly. So I don't really have to say much. But I try to be the conduit for people and really let them experience eating healthy and then falling off the wagon, because everyone does. And then saying, oh, that didn't feel so good. My body really doesn't want that anymore. And just let them have that experience, because that's how you learn what foods work for you and what don't. I mean, I don't tell people like, no, you can never have sugar. People are going to have sugar. So I try and get them to build it in organically and say, okay, let's be strategic about this. You can, at dinner, right? You can either have a cocktail or a starch or a dessert, but not all 3. So pick one. What's the one you want the most? Do you want steak, asparagus, and a glass of wine? Or do you want, you know, fish and spinach and a piece of cake after, or some ice cream later? Just build it in where you can balance and manage it all. And that is how you keep it sustainable.
That's great advice. Like that. You can have it, just not all of it. And every day as well.
Yeah, and portion size too. I mean, my husband eats a lot of ice cream, but he eats it in a ramekin. It's like, it's half a cup. He never goes above that portion. Would I rather he didn't eat it every day? Sure. But like, at least, you know, I'm like, hey, at least he portions it out and he's not overweight and he doesn't binge or anything like that. So
your book, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, where did it come from?
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind it?
Sex and the City was totally the inspiration. And by the way, Sex and the City is coming back now. It's like they're going to bring back Life in the 50s for 3 out of the 4 women. Kim did not want to do it, but yeah, so I'm so excited about that. So basically, and this is no disrespect to my colleagues, but I found a lot of nutrition books very, very boring. Like when I first started out in practice, my patients would say, did you read this book? Oh, and I read this book. I was like, nope, I didn't read diet books or nutrition books. I really was like, these are a snooze fest. They're very clinical and dry. I want to make my book absolute nightclub, the party. The whole motto of the book is your body may be a temple, but who says it can't be a nightclub? So like, I wanted to make nutrition super fun, super sexy. I wanted to make eating a sensual experience for everyone. And I wanted people to be able to take home the experience of having a nutrition consultation with me. Because I was like, not everyone can afford, you know, out of pocket nutrition consultation. So how do I give them a gift in a book? So I'll hold it up again. This is Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous. And so there's a chapter in here on PMS and breakups. There's a chapter on hangover recovery. There's a chapter called Gorgeous in Bed, which deals with like STDs and UTIs and herpes infections and, you know, all the things you get when you're dating and you're having sex. And I was living in New York City in my 20s, right? So I went through all those experiences. And so I really wanted to this book was 15 years of practice in this book. And my patients kept saying, you know, you're so funny, you should really write a book. And I was like, oh God, I don't know. I'm never going to write a book. And then after 9/11, my practice, shortly after, My landlord lost the lease on our floor. My whole office floor was all solopreneurs. And so all of us had to like pack up our stuff and move out quick. And I couldn't afford, like my practice was really slow after 9/11, and I couldn't afford another office at the time. I was paying student loans. I was going into debt. Like things were declining. And my husband was like, yeah, this isn't going to be sustainable for you. So I took a little time to refocus and started writing Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous. And it just like poured out of me. And about 6 months into writing it, I landed the job of kind of the head dietitian at Dr. Pericone's spa, and my book fell into the hands of his agent. So it was really like the timing was perfect. There was no social media at the time. I didn't have the pressures of like having a following. I just had like my credentials, and my agent was like, this book is awesome. We're going to get it out there. And to this day, it's still selling. It came out in 2007 and it's still selling. So it's still really relevant. It's fun and people enjoy it. They're happy reading it. There's no shame. There's no guilt. It's like the anti-diet book, because that was how I lived my life, right? It was like, I'm never following someone else's rules. It has to come from me. Has to. And even when I was a nutritionist, like training for the marathon, you know, she would shame me horribly, right? She would circle my martinis and my dark chocolate and red pen. She was like, what do you think you're doing? And I said, I'm having a healthy relationship with food. And she was just extremely judgmental about that. So I was like, I'm never doing that to my people. I'm just not. Like, we have enough judgment on ourselves when it comes to our bodies. I don't need to be that, like, beating people over the head with a stick, you know?
So you're one of the other books here, Cave Women Don't Get Fat.
Yes.
How did that come about? I mean, you got a Flintstone on there, and
yeah. This was more driven by my agent, to be fully transparent. You know, she kind of knew where I was heading. I wrote a book in between. I wrote a couple books in between. This is called the Project, right? Project, yeah. And this is sort of the bridge between Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous and Cave Women Don't Get Fat. So I was starting to, when I wrote this book, I was really starting to lean towards more paleo and saying, okay, well, if what you're doing isn't working, you know, start to cut back carbs, start to go gluten-free. So Cave Women Don't Get Fat really went hardcore, gluten-free, grain-free. It's a true paleo diet book, but it's a diet book for women because all the paleo diet books out there are written by men, and most of the studies done in the paleo world are on men. Most research studies are done on men, not women. That's why women, I mean, this is just a little sidebar, but like you see women on birth control pills, on Mirena, on IUDs, all these things that have very little clinical research. There's just, it's horrible. Like, women's health is terribly understudied, and I hope that really shifts in medicine. So Cave Women Don't Get Fat was no exception to that. When I wrote the section on intermittent fasting, I looked at, I would say, between 70 and 80 studies, and only 13 were done on women.
Fascinating.
So fascinating, right? So I was like, there is such a hole. So I want to tie in the paleo diet and carbs and help women find their own. I mean, men read this too, but it's helping them find their own unique carb tolerance. Saying, so I do a cleanse for a couple weeks where it's just fruit and vegetables and protein and fat, and then and do a good clean out. So weight loss can happen, de-bloat, get your energy back. And then I have people add in half a cup of carbs per day at a time. And I say, all right, is your body composition staying the same? Did you gain some weight? Or can you still lose weight and eat that amount of carbs? Okay, well, guess what? The next week, you're going to increase it to a cup of carbs per day. The next week, a cup and a half per day. So people really know, oh, this is the point where my weight plateaus, or this is the point where I'm really starving, or I need carbs before bed to sleep. So it enables people to really do some great detective work around their eating, figure out what works for them.
Right. Just to clear up, as fruits and vegetables typically are carbs, what type of carbs are you talking about reintroducing in small amounts?
Yes, great point. Very starchy carbs, because veggies can be, super low starch, mostly water, and fruit. Yes, fruit can end up having a lot of carbs. But if you're having 1 or 2 bananas a day, that's still 2 bananas is 34 grams of carbs, which is still technically keto if you think about it. Maybe not on your insulin levels, but if you're counting your grams of carbs, yes. So I have people adding in starchier carbs like sweet potatoes, white potatoes. Some people will consider white rice a paleo carb at this point. But winter squashes, all sorts of butternut, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, plantains, yucca. So really primal paleo carbs versus neo carbs, which are like flour products, legumes. Right. Legumes, not everyone tolerates legumes or hummus, those kinds of things. Grains.
Have you found any difference between a woman and what she eats, just in general, females, based on monthly cycles? Is there certain times of the month where protein should be higher, or different type of carb or fat should be changed or altered?
Yeah, so I always recommend a minimum threshold of 30 to 40 grams of protein at a meal. That's about 4 to 5 ounces per meal, which most people are under eating that to start. So that's the foundation. But then the first 2 weeks of a woman's cycle, you are much more insulin sensitive than the last 2 weeks of your cycle. The last 2 weeks of your cycle, as estrogen levels drop, so does your insulin sensitivity. And that's when all the cravings happen and the irritability and the mood swings, the exhaustion. So during that time, and there's usually about 3 days in a woman's cycle where and I'm no different, like kind of ravenous and like I can't eat enough and my cravings are really high. That's the time when I will really double up protein and make myself a big steak, a big steak or 2 pieces of steak, and have that and still have some carbs, but try not to go crazy out. But I'll really make sure to pay attention to protein and get extra protein in snacks. And that will tamp down the appetite, keep your blood sugar regulated, and keep your cravings at bay. So to that end, though, not all menstruating women do well on intermittent fasting. Where I'm really seeing women do well on intermittent fasting are my menopausal mamas, because they're not having monthly fluctuations. Their blood sugar, isn't wildly dropping the second half of the month for them. Right. So they can tolerate long periods without eating and do incredibly well and lose a lot of weight that way. So
menopausal women, intermittent fast, non-menopausal, not so much.
Not as much. I still have women that try it, but I don't start them off that way at all. I try to just really make sure they're building muscle, and by getting optimal protein and just keeping the carbs tight. I do have my patients log, and so we'll track, how well they'll do. But I really, again, I don't, the lowest I've put someone on is 100 grams of carbs a day. Most of the time it's like 120, 130, 140, 150 if they're super athletic, or if they're doing really hard workouts, they can have like 40 grams of carbs post-workouts from white rice or honey, depending on their body composition and their insulin sensitivity. So it's so individual, right? I mean,
it really is.
Everyone varies, but if you know ballparks, it really helps, because most people aren't accustomed to counting any of that. It's kind of obscure.
You have them write it down in a journal, or do you have an app that you typically?
Yeah, I use a special app for my clients, so
that helps.
Oh, it really helps, because the numbers don't lie. And what's great about it? It takes all the emotion out of it, because there's so much shame and guilt around eating. And like, I overdid it and this and that. When you have the numbers, you say, so I had a couple of cookies, but my carbs overall for the day were so low, I still was in range that day. So then people understand, I can do this and I didn't fail. Or, all right, I want to go out for pizza Friday night. Great, let me plan my week around it. Let me be in a little bit of a deficit on, the day of or the day before or overall in the week, so that when I do indulge, it doesn't matter. It has zero effect on my body composition.
Your other book here, Cave Women Detox Jumpstart. I think you kind of started talking about that a little bit, increasing the carbs. When it comes to protein sources, what do you like to gravitate towards? And have you seen changes with one source versus another, kind of in general on the whole? I know everyone's so individualized, but
changes, just so I'm clear on your question, have I seen changes in recommendations, you mean, or?
Correct. Do you recommend typically for one person, eating more fish versus somebody else, perhaps some kind of beef or wild animals,
Yes.
chicken? Does individuals mentally or physically show different changes in your observations?
Yes.
From one source to another?
Yes. So first, I do prefer animal proteins because they are a more complete amino acid profile than, let's say, plant proteins.
Mm-hmm.
People always ask me, what about tofu, and what about beans, and what about quinoa? So to give you an idea, a 4-ounce portion of meat, of beef, or 4 eggs, or 4 ounces of fish, that contains almost 30 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, again, 4 ounces, right? To get 30 grams of protein, you would have to eat 2 cups of quinoa. There's about 7 grams in a half a cup. I don't know about you. I would feel so lethargic and tired on 2 cups of carbs. I don't eat that much at once. I mean, maybe when I was in Italy or Vegas or something, I don't know. But like, those nights are rare indulgences. Imagine having to eat 2 cups just so at one meal you can get 4 ounces of protein.
Right.
Already, oh, that's not great. And yes, there's pea protein, which is very high in branched chain aminos, which builds muscle. But again, man cannot live on pea protein alone, right? So I really do advocate animal proteins. Whole eggs, the yolks are a great source of choline. Liver is another great source of choline, which supports brain health and brain function. But meat, anything from beef, venison, lamb, pork, bison. We eat rabbit in my house a lot.
That's a different one. Okay.
I make rabbit stew. It's delicious. So whole food meats, fish. Anytime you can get wild Alaskan salmon, I buy mine from Vital Choice, which is excellent. Wild caught shellfish or sustainably farmed, if you can. If you can't find it wild, and if you tolerate dairy, cottage cheese is actually a really rich source of protein. You can find some higher protein Greek yogurts. So all of those are good. Now, does everyone tolerate lots of red meat? No. And sometimes when I increase someone's protein, if they gain weight or they're just stuck not losing it, usually they have a fatty liver, and we have to actually pull back on protein and sometimes do plant-based, where I'll do full plant-based for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or I'll have people add in, protein at night, but just cut back on breakfast and lunch. Or I'll have them do like a plant-based cleanse for a couple weeks, where it's plant-based protein shakes for a couple meals and then a regular meal at night. Because if your liver is really congested and fatty, adding in more animal protein, which naturally contains more fat,
right,
is not your body won't be able to process and assimilate it so well. Even with digestive enzymes, a fatty liver can't be reversed with digestive enzymes. So you've got to give your body a break and then retry. And then it often works much better the second time.
Okay. How about sugar? Now, if inflammation is pretty much the cause of all diseases, and people love their sugar, and it's, as you know, it's addictive. I mean, people have a tough time getting off sugar. How do you incorporate removing that from somebody's diet, or at least, we talked about not 100%, but at least scaling that back to something reasonable that they can actually feel better, think better, perform better?
So I have a great giveaway. Actually, if you go to estherblum.com/cravings, cravings with an S, I made a 3-part video series with an ebook giveaway at the end. It's called Crush Your Cravings. And it helps people transition off sugar within 2 to 3 days. And we do that first by adding in a lot more protein, because protein stabilizes blood sugar for up to 6 hours after you eat it. Whereas if you have, let's say for breakfast, you're having a donut or even just like a bagel with cream cheese, or I get a lot of people eating toast with almond butter, that's not going to hold you, or cereal, that's not going to hold you for more than 2 hours. Your blood sugar will spike and then crash within 2 hours and be back to baseline or even below baseline. So once people start adding in protein, it eradicates sugar cravings within a couple days. Now, if you add in a lot of protein, but you're still eating sugar, you're still like, oh, I'm still having my ice cream at night, then of course, the more you eat, the more you crave. Right. And for some people, the withdrawal is pretty wicked. It's almost like drugs. And the researcher Robert Lustig, he has a tremendous amount of research on sugar, why it's toxic and how it's addictive. And it hits the same dopamine receptors in the brain as cocaine does. So it truly is addictive, and it can be. And so I work with people in getting the physiological symptoms resolved pretty quickly by adding in more proteins and quality fats and fiber and leveling out blood sugar. But beyond that, there's the emotional piece of recognizing, okay, when I'm craving sugar, like how many times have you been, tense or stressed or had anxiety, and you go right to the pantry and go for that piece of chocolate or face plant the trough of ice cream, right? So it's also learning the lifestyle management of like, okay, you don't actually need the answers to your problem are not on your pantry shelf. You've got to either, call a friend or journal or write about it, or, take a bath or breathe or go for a walk outside, like really managing bigger picture stress. And we all have tremendous stress, and people are really suffering right now and gaining a lot of weight. They're not going to the gym, and they're just eating their feelings and their stress. And so we really have to shake ourselves by the shoulder and say, okay, this may not be changing for a while. So how can I change my mindset around it? How do I really fix that? Because, and coming up with solutions and strategy and structure are essential in doing that.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody? I mean, because that is going on a lot now. And individuals that in the summertime usually lose the weight, then gain it in the winter, they never lost it in the summer. They gain it in the winter. It's not going away anytime soon. Yeah. If they're walking around thinking they're hungry, but they just want to comfort eat, how do you help them recognize it's not the food, it's between the ears?
Well, again, food logging is one of the greatest forms of cognitive behavioral therapy, because you see black and white what you're eating on day to day. Most people don't realize how much sugar they're eating. Once you start food logging it, you can see, oh my God, like half a cup of ice cream has X amount of sugar, a candy bar has this much sugar, or, even like the Starbucks.
Oh my goodness, yes.
The lattes have like more than a soda, like 2 sodas. So logging really helps you get clear on your sugar intake, and just slowly, adding in protein. I say also, like, if you had any kind of vacation budget before COVID, just spend it on some exercise equipment. I will show you, like, in my office. Let me see if I can. That is a spin bike that we bought online. It's not a Peloton. It's a spin bike. I think the Peloton app you can get for pretty cheap, but we bought it for, I think it was $300 like years ago on Amazon. You can buy weights, you can buy kettlebells. You don't have to buy a treadmill. You can just go outside. It was 19 degrees where I live this morning. I put on my snow pants and my turtle fur and my hat and my long coat, and I walk my dog and my ski gloves, and I walk my dog for an hour. Like, you just go out in the bad weather, or you have a spin bike, or you've got to rethink how you're going to work out, and you don't need a lot of space to do it. YouTube videos also have tons of workouts using just your body weight too. Mm-hmm. You can just plug in YouTube at home 20-minute workout. No, body weight, and like you'll see 30 come up in a heartbeat.
Everyone's making stuff, and that content is definitely growing. There's plenty of options.
Yeah. Or you can buy a jump rope and just jump rope to 5 songs in a row. That's like 25 minutes right there.
It is.
And you just go on, jump rope for 2 minutes and stop for 30 seconds and jump rope. There's so many different ways, but we have to realize that if you're not going to the gym right now, you probably won't be for a long time. So you've got to start putting pieces in place to like work out at home and get over the fact that you're not going to be in a gym and there's no stimulation around you. You've got to just do it, because the alternative is staying stuck where you're at and staying overweight and coming out of this, in horrible shape, which puts you at worse risk for COVID. So you want to make sure you're really prioritizing your health. And by the way, like, exercise to me is my natural mood elevator. I mean, I treat people with depression, and the exercise and the movement is a super important component.
Mm-hmm.
It like releases all these feel-good neurotransmitters. It boosts blood flow to the brain. It reduces your risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. So you got to move it or lose it.
Now, a lot of people have difficulties with change. I mean, they're living a lifestyle. That's who they are. It's what they do. And earlier in our podcast here, you said, I guess in your 20s, that you were a party girl. You like to go out and hang out and have fun. So you obviously made some changes.
Yeah.
For the most part. How did you do it that others might be relate to transition to a different type of lifestyle that may be better for them long term?
You have to have a really big why. You have to know why you're doing something. You can't, if I just said to you, you've got to go and you've got to ride a bike every day and you've got to go lift weights. You're like, all right, that's fine. It's not terribly exciting.
Right.
If I said to you, you know what? Think about your life in 10 years. Don't you want to be hiking Kilimanjaro with your daughter and showing her the world and being healthy enough to get up off the floor to play with your grandchildren one day? And don't you want to just like wake up with boundless energy and never feel tired and be in a happy mood all day? Or don't you want to be an example for other people? Like, everyone has their own individual why, but that's a real deep that's a deep intrinsic motivator versus an extrinsic motivator, which is just someone barking at you and saying, do this, and this. And some people respond really well to extrinsic motivation. I know a friend of mine loves Orange Theory because she's like, I need big men yelling at me and barking at me all the time. I'm like, go for it. That's awesome.
Right.
Other people are like, oh, I don't like that at all. And I shut down when someone's yelling at me. And so I'm like, great. Well, then figure out what you want. Are you sick of having joint aches and pains? Are you tired of like going into your closet every morning and tucking your stomach into your pants? Do you want to feel sexy and beautiful when you're walking around naked? Do you want to actually have sex? Because a lot of people aren't, because they don't feel confident in their bodies. Like, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like in 6 months? You can choose door number A, which is stagnation and staying stuck where you're at. Mm-hmm. Or you can choose door B, which is full of possibility and action and inspiration. And, people think, oh, I'm just going to, I'm going to wait till I feel motivated and then I'm going to go do it. No, I don't. I would love to sleep till 9 o'clock every morning. I don't necessarily want to get up at 6:10 every morning, but I know that if I don't get that workout in, my day is miserable and I'm not productive and I'm just lethargic and tired. So I want to feel better. I want to feel really good all day. And that gets me up out of bed. I don't want to be asleep on the couch. I can't stand myself when I'm that, lethargic and not moving and feeling unfit and icky. And plus I like to eat a lot too. So in order to do it, I need to move every day. So my why, the way I was able to let things go is because the benefits far outweighed the pleasure of a cocktail. I was like, it's not even worth it to me anymore. And now I don't even think about drinking. It shocks me. It really shocks me. But I don't think about every now and then when I'm really oh, I am really in the mood for a drink, I'll do it. But in the dead of winter also, it messes with my immune system. So I'm just so careful. I'm like, I don't need it. I don't want it. And I'll brew myself some lemon balm tea or some yogi bedtime tea, and that takes the edge off. Or if I'm stressed or anxiety, I'll take some homeopathics, which are calming, or some herbal teas, and those do it for me. I feel relaxed and need the drink to numb out.
There's a lot to be said about the why. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how can individuals get your books and get in contact with you?
So my books are all on Amazon, or you can just go to my website, estherblum.com, get on my mailing list. I teach monthly workshops at no cost for you. And another bonus I have, so you can get your Crush Your Cravings 3-part video series. It's estherblum.com/cravings. And Esther is with an H. It's ESTHERBLUM. And for your listeners, I have opened up 7 spots in my calendar. Once these spots are gone, they are gone. But you can get in my calendar and have a 30-minute metabolic blueprint strategy call with me where we get on the phone, we talk about your goals, and you will leave the call with 3 customized tools to reach those goals that are tailored to you. So if you would like to take advantage of that, you can go to estherblum.com/call, CALL.
That's a wonderful offer. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you.
Well, our time is ticking down here, and I want to definitely thank you so very much for being here and joining myself and everybody listening. And the links that you gave me, I'll also put in the show notes to make it easy. So if anyone's driving right now while they're listening, don't worry about it. Just hit the show notes and click on the link.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esther. Have an amazing day.
You
and
too.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Appreciate you.
Take care.